Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
So before I get into the actual text itself, my daughter Sarah and I were having a conversation as we were walking the dog. And I was discussing the fact, of course, that I'm studying at this point Midrash Rabbah on the Megillah, on Megillat Esther, on the book of Esther. And my daughter was saying to me how she felt that the book of Esther in some ways is a model of the Torah, in the sense that there are many deep elements and messages within that story, and that even though the story of Esther is very delightful, even on the most simple level, nevertheless, there are very deep elements to it as well. And I was sharing with her that there's a whole tradition of interpretation of the book of Esther that goes into very deep kinds of things, and stuff I was reading today in Midrash Rabbah. And I will share this with you. It's sort of interesting that one of the Midrashim sort of talks about an interpretation that the person who killed his wife on account of the one who loved him wound up killing the one who loved him on account of his wife. And that refers to Achashverosh, because there's a tradition that he didn't just banish Vashti, he had her killed. And of course, this wasn't something that actually made any sense. She had not dealt a capital offense, but there's a whole tradition that Vashti herself was actually the daughter of kings, and Achashverosh was not. He was a commoner, and that Haman, who's Memucan, mentioned in the book of Esther. Again, so we're dealing with stuff that is hidden, that Memucan, who gave him that advice when Vashti refused to come. And it makes sense to identify, and why he's called Memucan is explained. I won't do that right now, but essentially he was acting as a, quote, lover of Achashverosh, in that by getting rid of Vashti, Achashverosh would have an ability to show power, and that he also was making laws without consulting the men of knowledge, etc. And of course, and so he killed Vashti on Haman's advice, and eventually, of course, he took care of Haman based on what Esther did, who was his wife at the time. So the one who killed his wife because of the one who loved him, eventually killed the one who loved him because of his wife. Just very interesting sorts of stuff. So we were discussing about this and saying also that in the way, and of course the word Esther has a meaning of lahachtir, means to disappear, to hide, and that and of course we know God's name isn't mentioned in the entire book of Esther. There's this whole concept of hastarat panim, meaning the presence of God being hidden. But in many ways, we could talk about the fact that there's so many elements that are hidden to ourselves, and that when we study Torah, it brings out those hidden parts, that it has the potential, if we study Torah in a serious kind of way, in the way that I believe we're trying to do in these classes, that it helps one start to bring out those deeply embedded elements within ourselves. And so that was basically the conversation that we had regarding the book of Esther and its relevance to the whole idea of Torah study and what it does for us. So with that, I'm going to look at sharing the screen with you. I need the place, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay. Here we are. Okay. Very good. Incidentally, I did send a copy of that English piece, the chart that I had. Let's see something. I'm sorry, I have to do this if it will work for me. And right now it doesn't seem to be. I'm looking for a bookmark. Oh, there it is. My computer's slow this morning for some reason, and I don't really know. Oops. Nope. It's way too far. Let's go there. Okay, and let's try this. Okay, whether we got one more here. Yes. There we are. I think this is where we were on. Yeah. If this makes sense. Yes. Thank you. Okay, so we were on verse 4. We're in the middle of the Rashi of verse 4, and it has, if you have that sheet that I sent you, if that's helpful, to take a look at this chronology that Rashi is doing, and a little bit of mathematics, or arithmetic at any rate, right? So he says, look at this. So he says that the ark actually rested, right, on the 17th day of the month. Let's take a look at this here. Here we go. Vatanach hateva b'chodesh hashvi'i. The ark rested in the 7th month, b'shiva asar yom lachodesh, on the 17th day of the month, al hararei Ararat, on the mount of Ararat, on the mountains of Ararat. By the way, those mountains are identified as being in Turkey. That's the main interpretation that I've heard. At any rate, this is what Rashi does with this. And of course, he's going in a direction that I tend to not go in, but it's playing around, and the fact that the Torah can be interpreted in so many different kinds of ways. So, Mikan ata lamed. So you learn from this. Shahaita hateva mishukat b'mayim yud aleph ama. That you can figure out that the ark was submerged into the water 11 cubits. Look at that. I mean, this is almost, I think, like a treat that Rashi's trying to present us, that there's this, wow, where do we get that, right? This sort of detail about the fact that that was the lading line of the ark, 11 cubits into the water. So here he goes with his proof. Shaharei Ketiv, why? Because it says, Ba'asiri ba'echad lachodesh, that in the 10th month, on the first day of the month, Nir'u Rashi Harim, that the tops of the mountains appeared. So the waters had decreased sufficiently so that the tops of the mountains were appearing. Ze Av. This would have to be the month of Av, Shahu Asiri Lamar Cheshvan, because that is the 10th month following the month of Cheshvan, L'Yeridat Geshamim. And we know that, in fact, the rain started falling in Mar Cheshvan. I believe it was the 17th day of Mar Cheshvan that the rains started to fall, right? L'Yeridat Geshamim. So 10 months after the rain started to fall, the waters had receded sufficiently that the tops of the mountains could appear, right? Ama the Shishim Yom. Sorry. Here we go. Vehem hayu gvohim al heharim 15 ama. And from the information given to us in the Torah itself, it says that the waters were above the mountaintops by 15 ama, 15 cubits. V'chasru miyom echad b'Sivan, and they started to recede on the first day of Sivan, ad echad ba'av, to the first day of Av. Now, I certainly couldn't understand this just from reading it. I cannot, my brain does not absorb that kind of information in a way that I can follow what's going on. So that's why I wrote the chart, and I will try and refer to the chart in the meantime after we look at this Rashi, right? Right, okay. So let me see. Okay. 15 ama the shishim yom. So if you figure out that the waters started to recede on the 1st of Sivan, right, until the first day of Av, you wind up with 60 days from one date to the next date. And we were told that there were 15 cubits of water that were receding in 15 cubits of water receding in 60 days. So if you do the arithmetic, Hare Ama La'arba Yamim, you figure out, right? 15 into 60 goes 4 times. So every 4 days, it was 1 cubit every 4 days. Nimtza, so that you can say, Shebetaz b'Sivan, that on the 17th day of Sivan, Lo Chasru, right? So on the 17th of Sivan, Ella Arba Amot, right? So on the 17th of Sivan, they were only diminished 4 cubits, Benacha Hateva Layom HaMacharot, and the following day the ark rested. Lamadata, so you learn from this that Haita Meshukat Judah Aleph Ama. So from this you can deduce that it was sunk into the water 11 cubits b'mayim, into the water, she'al rashei ha'arim, that was above the hills at the time when the waters covered the hills. Now let me do the other share. Let me make sure I can find it quickly. So I need to do some there it is. So that's good. Go back in here and see what I can do. Hope this is it. Yeah. So here's the flood timeline, right? So the rain started to fall for 40 days. So from the 17th of Cheshvan to the end of Cheshvan, which is 29 days. So we're looking at, 13 days. That's counting the 17th itself, right? So 13 days, and then 27 days in Kislev, you'd have to add, so that from 40 days would be 27. So that's 27 days in Kislev. So we figure out that the rains ended on the 27th of Kislev. And then we're told that they were above they were at their maximum for 150 days. They remained at their maximum 150 days. And that they were at their maximum, they were also 15 cubits above the hills, the tops of the hills. Okay. So figuring 150 days into the calendar from the 27th day of Kislev, when the rains ended, there were 3 more days to the end of Kislev, 29 days of Tevet. You can read this yourselves, right? Do this addition, and you wind up with 150 days, right? So the first day following Iyar is a 29-day month. So on the 1st of Sivan, the waters begin to diminish. And we're told that the ark rested on the 17th of Sivan, okay? So we figure out, I believe, right, from the, so the ark rested in, here we go, make sure I've got this correct here. Right, okay. So the ark rested on the 17th of Sivan. So, and we know that the tops of the mountains were visible 60 days after the waters began to diminish. Here we are. This is, and he figures out the 1st of Av, which is 10 months from Cheshvan, when the rain started to fall. So if you count the number of months, you'll see, okay, that's 60 days. Wait a second. Sorry. From the point that the waters began to diminish, right? And this was in the 10th month. It says that's what it says in the text. So the waters took 60 days to diminish until the tops of the mountains became visible, right? From Sivan 1st to Av 1st was 60 days, right? When the tops of the mountains were visible. And since we are told that the waters covered the mountains by 15 cubits and that it took 60 days for the water to recede. They receded a cubit, here we go, in 1 cubit in 4 days. And now since the ark rested on the 17th of Sivan, and it was still floating on the 16th, the day before, hence the waters receded 44 days to the 16th. That is 11th. I'm not sure how that is. I must have this wrong. I don't know. Because that's just 17 days. I'm going to see what this is saying. So I need to look this again and see.
Yeah, I raised my hand.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's basically the math was it's 15 cubits, right? 17 days or 16 days divided by 4 is 4. So basically it lowered 4 cubits. 15 minus 4 cubits means that they were resting 11 cubits above. So yeah. So I think
This must be.
So this has got to be a little different than that.
Well, wait a second. This would make, let's see. I'm trying to think, would this, let's try something here. 1 second. 1, 2, so 1, this is Kislev, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay. And then we said another 60 days. Yeah, so if the ark rested, it would have to be, how about Tammuz? It doesn't make, wait a second. Yeah. Oh, right. So in other words, above the tops of the mountains, right? Because the ark was resting. So the waters, right? If the ark was submerged, right? There would have been, yes, I see what he's saying. I think, right? That the ark, okay, from the 1st of Sivan to the 17th of Sivan would be how many cubits did you say?
4 cubits.
Right.
It's 4 cubits.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I believe that okay, so 4 cubits from 15 leaves
is 11.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And remember, the ark was submerged 11 cubits. That's
correct.
So that's how it gets it. Okay. So the ark must have been submerged that amount in the water if it rested in, if this was when it's correct, if the ark rested on the 17th of Sivan and the tops of the mountains were only visible on the 1st of Av. There we go. So he's correct, at least according to this particular chronology. Now, there is, I'm going to make sure I can find the other share in a second. In a moment, I want to make sure I'm going to stop this share and go back to our text. So this is where we are right now. Now, this is a very long Rashi, as you can see, and it is all devoted. I'll do the first little part of it, but he goes on to try to explain a complicated assumption. Let me just do that. That's not that complicated, but the proof of it is complicated. And I actually included it in the second page of the sheet I sent you. So let's go on. All right. So this we've dealt with this Rashi here. V'hamayim hayu haloch b'chasor, and the waters continued to, haloch b'chasor means to continually recede, right? The waters can continue to recede ad hachodesh hasiri, until the 10th month. Now it doesn't say what month, and what do we mean by the 10th month? Remember, we had the 7th month, right? It says chodesh hashvi'i, and that he says is from the beginning of Kislev. That's how, right? That was on that sheet. So does that mean that the 10th month here is also from the beginning of Kislev? And you'll see he says it isn't. That 10th month has to do from when the rains, you'll see, started to fall. We'll take a look, right? So Ba'asiri, so in this 10th understood month, Be'echad lash chodesh, on the first day of that month, Nir'u Rashi Harim. That was when the tops of the mountains were seen. And you'll see that he says that it is the first of Av, right? So here we go. He says this 10th month is Av, and I'll share maybe the English in a little bit just to show that to you. So he says, etc. Niru Rashi Harim, that the tops of the mountains were seen. Ze Av, Shehu Asiri Lamar Cheshvan. So you see, he's saying that when we're talking about the 10th month here, we're talking about a different counting, that it's not from the beginning of Kislev, but it's the 10th month after Cheshvan. Shehitchil Hageshem, when the rain started to fall. And right here starts his proof, right? He says, V'im tomar hu Elul, right? If you're going to say, no, it's not Av, it's Elul, which is the following month, but Asiri leKislev, and when it says the 10th month, it means the 10th month for Kislev, Shepasak Hageshem, when the rain ceased to fall. And then Kashem Shata Omer B'Chodesh Hashvi'i, in the same sense in which you talked about the 7th month, also being the 7th month from Kislev, which is Sivan, V'hu Shvi'i Lahafsakat, and that would be the 7th month from the end of the rain, etc. I don't want to keep going, only because it's so complicated. Here, look at this. It goes on and on and on and on. Essentially, he says that the proof of this is that you would wind up that the whole flood story ends a month later, okay? And let's take a look and see, because later on it says the first of the first month, and by first month he means Tishrei, according to one opinion, and according to Rabbi Yehoshua, who says that the first month this has to be understood as Nisan. It would mean that the rain started to fall in the month following Nisan, which would mean they fell. According to Rabbi Yehoshua, the flood started in Iyar. Let me go quickly, see what I can do to find that sheet and share it with you for a moment. Okay. Here's the other one, right? Rashi proves that when the Torah speaks of the 10th month, and I'm not going to look at this real quickly, it means the 10th month from Cheshvan and not from Kislev, when the rains ended. So you see that the 10th month here would be Elul, and he says it isn't. So Cheshvan is the month before Kislev. The way the calendar goes, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev. And the flood started in Cheshvan. So that's why he says it's the first day of the 10th month. In this case, if you start with Cheshvan, the first day of the 10th month is the first of Av, right? So this is essentially how Rashi goes ahead to prove that the land was dry, right? That he sent the dove, right? On the first of Cheshvan could not be the first. No one would ever consider the first being Cheshvan, the first month, right? Generally, when you're counting months, we do count Nisan as the first month, but when we're looking at the year of months, then the first month is Tishrei. So there's this differential on 6 months, but no one would say the first of Cheshvan would be the first month of the year. So, okay. Right, which would mean, right. So the land was right. This is according to the correct, the correct understanding. All right, I'm not going to go, I'm going to stop this share. We're going to go back into the Rashi, and I'm going to skip this, even though normally I go through every single bit of this. So let me go back into the text. Are there any questions before we move on? Because we're going to be skipping all of this stuff here.
Why does this matter?
Yes. It's a good question, right? Well, I said at the beginning of going into this that it has to do with why people do crossword puzzles or like puzzles. And this is like a puzzle. It's an arithmetic puzzle. And it's as if, The Torah operates on lots and lots of levels, and one human and essentially on a human level, and there's a fascination with being able to come up with these various details that are implied by the clues, right? Clues in the Torah, and that you can deduce all these sorts of things. It's very similar to the process of filling a crossword puzzle. So why do people do crossword puzzles? Because there's a level of satisfaction that one gets in trying to solve a puzzle or solve a riddle. It's a very human condition. And Judith, I'm open to your responding to that if you feel that's a good enough answer. Maybe it isn't.
Well, I don't find it interesting. But
That's
on the other hand, when and it's just like, these are numbers and I'm not going to get it, and I don't, get into it. But
excuse me,
this
your
is kind of
cat clearly gets it, Judith. Your cat is getting
oh
it.
yes, of course, Shelley gets it.
Yes. Okay.
But
I had to interrupt
the
you.
thing is, yes, but the thing is that we each get pulled in different ways,
Yes.
and this is arcane. A lot of Talmudic stuff is very arcane, and very small details end up having a significant effect. But I don't know, it doesn't do anything for me.
I
And
hear
I don't
you.
know what to do with it. I don't
Right.
really know what to do with it.
I'd
Right.
like to, can I
Go
say
ahead.
something?
Please.
To say something. The thing that I'm getting out of this is, Rabbi, it's your class. And this is the Torah. And this is something that I see you aglow with, grappling, wrestling with all these different, things. And I don't, like Judith, I don't really get it. I don't go into these kinds of things. I wouldn't do it. But being here and watching you, how you teach, how you process, that's the gem.
Well, thank you. I will tell you that generally this, if all of the Rashi was like this, I wouldn't be studying it. Okay. On the other hand, I do like puzzles. I don't do crosswords. And I will tell you, there are moments when, believe me, it hasn't happened often in my life. But I remember, I will never forget, there was a day when I was studying with another rabbi in Canton, Ohio, and we were doing a Tosafot on a particular Gemara. And I have to tell you, just the sheer brilliance of the argumentation was so elegant. I mean, in mathematics, there is a concept of elegance, of an elegant proof. And it's a type of aesthetic that totally bowls you over as a person when you're able to follow the logical reasoning going behind it. Now, I'm saying that I normally, the reason why I think we're all in this together is because we all share a specific aesthetic in terms of, the deeper understanding of these passages, etc. David, I'll recognize you just a second. But on the other hand, I think we have to allow, and even if we ourselves don't necessarily appreciate and find this stuff just, kind of didactic and, way too detailed, etc. They say God is in the details. And I am sure that, for example, maybe it would be both of you, Lisa and Judith, that when you're looking at an antique and you're starting to you might take a magnifying glass and take a look at the workmanship of that particular piece of jewelry or whatever. And as you look carefully at it and see the brilliance and the artistry in the detail of that piece of jewelry, it could be that to someone like myself who doesn't necessarily appreciate that kind of workmanship, it makes you glow in a way to know that you can appreciate those kinds of elements. And if I'm giving a bad example, I do want you to tell me, but I'm trying to come up with an example that I'm thinking maybe would be relatable. And David, please go for it.
Yeah. So what I was going to say was it also appears to me that the whole point of our Torah study, or one of the points of our Torah study, excuse me, is kind of growth through unraveling of mysteries, right? The Torah has many, many mysteries in it, right? And there's mysteries kind of for everybody. So this particular mystery happens to be a mathematical, detail oriented one, but yet it draws in, people that are attracted to that and therefore grow by unraveling that. Whereas there are other mysteries that we've studied throughout the course of this that allow people to grow. So it just seems to me that we have all these places in the Torah that enable everybody to grow by being able to unravel a mystery that's interesting to them and draws them in. So,
Right.
and I appreciate the fact that you've been able to bring out all these mysteries for the past year and a half that I've been in this class. So anyway, that was my input.
Thanks, David. I'd like, I can't believe how the time has disappeared in this class, but also I would think at least it's a piece of candy, and it may be a piece of candy that it's not necessarily chocolate, which perhaps has a more universal appeal. This may be a more specific kind of appeal. And before I stop the recording, if there's any last comments, please go for it, and then I will stop the recording.
I just wanted to say that I was late, so I didn't get the beginning. But if the different opinions about when the flood started, if one of the opinions was that it started in the summer,
Yes.
then that would add an element of amazing strangeness to the whole thing.
I agree.
Because there is no rain in that part of the world from like April to October.
Right. Yes. Yes, it occurred to me too, as I was thinking of Rabbi Yehoshua's opinion, right, that the world was created on the 1st of Nisan as opposed to the 1st of Tishrei, and I agreed. And of course, the argument can go both ways. One is it makes less sense, and on the other hand, I believe Rabbi Yeshua could encounter, yes, but the whole thing was miraculous, and the whole point was, and we also have a story in Samuel, I believe, where the rains are falling out of season as a sort of curse, and that if this whole episode was a divine punishment, that would be an even greater indication if it started in the summer. But most people hold that it started in Cheshvan, and that the first, in this case, the first is the 1st of Tishrei and not Nisan. But it's just for the sake of it. But thank you. Yes, I'm glad you brought that out, and I am going to stop the recording now. See where it stopped. I need to stop the share first, and then I can stop the recording.